I want you to watch this clip of Jordan B. Peterson at the Oxford Union getting confronted about his speaking out against Islamists, as well as his support for Tommy Robinson in his fight to expose the grooming gangs. Check it out.
I agree with you. We should not brush this under the carpet. And we do have some data available. According to a 2021 Home Office report, the 85% of the suspects were white.
85% of the suspects in what crimes?
In these grooming gangs, and especially child sex abusers. There have been 85% been white. The rest have been ethnic minorities. But the narrative, however, has been about race, immigration.
It's not the issue. The issue is that there's disproportionate representation of people by proportion of population. Percentage of perpetrators is irrelevant if the majority of the ethnic groups involved.
But before we get there, though.
Well, there's no before you get there. That's key to the question.
No, there is. Before we get there, I think the important issue over here is when we see such statistics, but more importantly, cases when it comes to a larger majority of the population, the framing does not come about ethnicity or race. It is completely an individual event. However, when it comes to minorities, then the framing is about ethnicity. That is the issue that I want to push you on. Why should we allow in terms of minorities, but not in terms of the majority population, which is white, that has been the suspected ones in these cases?
Well, if 85% of the population is white and 85% of the sex offenders are white, then sex offending has nothing to do with ethnicity.
Yes,
obviously.
Precisely.
But if 15% of the population is an ethnic minority and 30% of the crimes are caused by that minority, then ethnicity might play a role. And the statistic that you laid out didn't provide that information. So it's not relevant in the framing of the question. My understanding is that a disproportionate number of Pakistani Muslims in particular were responsible for a disproportionate number were responsible for this outrage. Now, why is that? Well, I don't know why it is, but I'm not willing to take any diagnostic consideration off the table because it's uncomfortable. As I already said, whatever diagnostic analysis you use is going to produce immense discomfort because the crimes were hideous and sadistic. And it's also the case that turning a blind eye to such things and failing to make the proper diagnosis is a trick used by people who want to virtue signal about their tolerance instead of bluntly confronting the problem and attempting to solve it. And that's not wise. So I'd rather do whatever's necessary to lay out the problem. We're so deceived about the problem that we don't even know how many victims there were. That's too blind. You know that you're terrified for whatever reason when you can't even specify the victim number properly, much less the number of, let's say, the number of rapes, the absolute number of rapes. I mean, I've seen estimates that vary by an order of magnitude. That's not an estimate. That's a guess made by people who've made themselves blind.
So why is the case? Why is it, especially for someone like Tommy Robinson, when he ignores all the data, including the report from the Home Office, that instead of considering all the factors, it's very easy to just focus on the rhetorics that gives them supports and align it with race and ethnicity, especially immigrants and minorities?
You might ask, why platform someone like that? And I would say, well...
No, I will never ask. We have a platform here. We believe in free speech.
It's
about challenging him on aligning.
Right. But I understood your question, and I will answer it. I guess I could just jump to the answer. When part of the story is hidden under the carpet, it takes a lot of focused attention to bring that to light. And you could say that Robinson erred in the mechanics of his investigation, but I would also say that there isn't anyone in the UK who's been more effective in bringing this issue to international attention than Tommy Robinson. And you might say, well, I wish he was a better man, And then I guess what I would say to that is, well, you could have been that better man, but you weren't. So that's, if the savior you got, so to speak, has flaws in his character that you don't approve of, then perhaps you in all your moral glory should have stood up as a more effective spokesperson. And if you didn't, then I guess you really don't have that much to say.
So hold on. What he's trying to say is, you first called him crazy. You said he was wrong. You said he was wrong with exposing the grooming gangs. Then you admitted that he's right, and everybody pretty much agrees that there's a problem. And yet now you're saying, oh, you were racist. You didn't bring it out the way it should have been done, and you should have been more sensitive, etc. If you ignore a problem like this for so long and somebody finally exposes it, do you really expect him to expose it exactly the way it should be exposed, talking about it exactly the way it should be talked about? No. What you should have done is not ignored it in the first place. And the fact that it's being exposed now in a way that you don't want it to is probably your own fault.
Someone like that can still be useful in many regards. And I think not only was he was, but he still is. And I also think that he's been treated so dreadfully by your country that to call it shameful is to barely even scratch the surface. He's been in solitary confinement. Now, the reason for that is somewhat unclear. He's been in solitary confinement for 4 months. And if you don't think that's cruel and unusual punishment, then you're not thinking. And maybe he'll last through the next 5 months, and maybe he won't. But he certainly won't emerge from that entirely intact, because that's too much to ask of anyone.
Would there be an opinion on when you say he's been treated badly? The English legal system is considered or regarded one of the best legal systems, with the institution that it has held for so long and provided common law to the rest of the world. When statements like that are made, that is a direct statement on the judiciary and the judges. So are you saying that the judges that have decided on those cases did not do according to the law when they treated him in this way?
There's the law and there's the spirit of the law. I don't see that there's any evidence that what the judges did was illegal, but I do know that no one else has been thrown into a maximum security prison for that particular civil offense. And I also know that the prisons that he was thrown in before were known to pose a great threat to the integrity of his life and his limbs. And I know as well that he was beat very severely the last time he was incarcerated while he was in prison, and that he was also frightened enough about the fact that he was likely to be poisoned by the criminals who were incarcerated in the same prison as him, who were incarcerated not least because they had threatened to kill him before, that he subsisted on very little other than canned tuna for 3 months while he was in maximum security, and lost 35 pounds in consequence of that, and is facing exactly the same conundrum now. My wife had arranged last week to go visit Robinson, which is apparently something you can generally do to people who've committed a civil offense, unless they happen to be held for mysterious reasons in a maximum security prison. And the authorities first gave her permission and then rescinded it. And their excuse was that there wasn't enough, they hadn't been given enough warning or notice about the impending visit. And that despite the fact that they had awarded her permission. So, do I think the judiciary did something illegal? Doesn't look like it, but and I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't look like it. But I don't care what you think of Tommy Robinson. The way he's being treated is not acceptable.
But
solitary punishment is cruel and unusual punishment. So he's in prison for 9 months. Fair enough. There's minimum security prisons, there's medium security prisons, there's maximum security prisons, and there's solitary. And he's in solitary. And so, did he deserve what he got? He deserved it enough so that he took his medicine when he had to. I know perfectly well that Robinson had left the country, and that there was no reason for him to come back to face the music, And I know that he knew that there was an overwhelming likelihood that not only would he be convicted, but that he would be thrown back into a maximum security prison and that they would drop the hammer on him. And he came back and faced the music nonetheless. And you could ask yourself in all good conscience if you would have had the courage to do the same, and the probability that you would have approaches zero so closely that you might as well just assume that you wouldn't have. That's the safest assumption. And so I don't see anything that's acceptable in what's happened to him, and this is independent of what you think of him as a political actor or as a moral agent, for that matter.
100% correct. Somebody like Tommy Robinson should not be thrown into isolation where murderers go and rapists go, and people that he actually talked about and got imprisoned go. People that he helped bring to justice are going there, and he is with them. It's absolutely sick. It's anti-free speech. It's anti-American, and obviously it's not America, but they should definitely learn a thing or two, because over here, even the pro-Hamas supporters such as Mahmoud Khalil seem to get away free. For more, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.